Three big dominoes fell this week, and almost everyone is looking at the wrong one. Everyone's mourning the Clarity Act delay. It's over. Crypto's dead. But while the crowd was staring at that, two much bigger things happened, quietly, in the background. First, a jobs report that stunned economists. The US economy actually lost jobs last month. Nobody saw it coming. Second, a currency crisis on the other side of the world got so serious that the United States stepped in to rescue Japan's yen for the first time since 1998. Now here's the part nobody is connecting for you. That bad jobs report, it may have just stripped the Federal Reserve of its excuse to raise rates. And a Fed that can't hike is a Fed that takes its boot off the neck of assets like XRP. So while the headlines scream recession and regret, I'm going to show you the machine underneath, honestly. The good, the bad, and the one honest catch nobody else will admit. No hype, no doom, no fake screenshots. Because two of these three dominoes just quietly tilted in XRP's favor. Stay with me. Real quick, from the heart. None of this is financial advice, and I'm not a financial advisor. I can't predict the Fed, the economy, or price, and nobody can. Everything here is my opinion, a scenario, never a promise. So protect your family first, do your own research, and never let anyone rush your decisions, me included. Okay? Let's get into it. Let me start with the domino that actually moved the markets this week, because it wasn't the one everyone's talking about. Yesterday morning, the government released the July jobs report, and economists were expecting a modest gain, somewhere around 80,000 new jobs. Instead, the number came in negative. The US economy lost about 23,000 jobs last month. That's the first outright drop in months, and it caught almost everyone off guard. And when you look under the hood, it's even softer than the headline. Wage growth slowed to 3.2% over the year, the weakest pace in about 5 years. The share of Americans actually working or looking for work fell to its lowest level in over 5 years. And the two previous months got revised down by around 100,000 jobs combined. So this wasn't one ugly month in isolation. It's a trend that's been quietly cooling underneath the surface. Now, I want to be honest and human about this, because there are real people inside these numbers. A softer job market is a genuinely serious thing. It affects families, it affects confidence, it affects how safe people feel spending or investing. I'm never going to cheer for a weak economy, and I'm not going to pretend this part is fun. But here's where my job is to help you see the whole board, not just the scary headline. Because in the strange machinery of markets, a piece of news that feels bad for the economy can quietly change the one thing that has been pressing down on crypto all year. And that one thing is the Federal Reserve. So before you let the word recession scare you out of paying attention, let me show you the second layer of this report, the layer that almost nobody bothered to explain, because it might be the most important thing for XRP holders that happened all week. Okay, let's walk through the machine slowly, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. For most of this year, the story pressing down on crypto has been the fear of the Federal Reserve raising interest rates. Inflation stayed stubbornly high, oil shocks made it worse, and several Fed officials openly said they were ready to hike as soon as September if prices didn't cool. Just last week, the Fed voted 9-3 to hold rates steady, but with a hawkish hike if we have to tone hanging over everything. Now here's why that matters for you. When rates go up, money gets more expensive, and investors pull cash out of the riskier, more speculative corners of the market first. Crypto sits right at the top of that list. A hawkish Fed is a headwind for XRP. Full stop. So what does a surprisingly weak jobs report do to that? It quietly kicks a leg out from under the case for hiking. The Fed has two big jobs: keep prices stable and keep employment healthy. When the job market starts cracking like this, it becomes very hard for them to justify raising rates, because a hike would only put more pressure on an already weakening economy. As one chief economist put it right after the report, the Fed's job just got a lot harder, and you could see the market feel it instantly. The moment that report hit, traders shifted their bets away from a September hike. The dollar softened, Bitcoin popped, XRP caught a bounce. That's not a coincidence. That's the machine reacting in real time to a Fed that may have just lost its excuse. So let me put the question to you directly, and answer honestly in your head before the comments. If a weaker economy makes the Fed less likely to raise rates, yes or no, is that quietly a tailwind for an asset like XRP, even though the news itself sounds bad? Just yes or no. Hold your answer. Because there's a second domino most people didn't even notice, and it's happening 5,000 miles away. This one flew almost completely under the radar in the crypto world, and I think that's a mistake, because it's huge. Over in Japan, the country's currency, the yen, has been sliding for years, recently hitting levels not seen since the 1980s. And this week, it got serious enough that the United States actually stepped in to help. For the first time since 1998, the US Treasury joined Japan in buying yen to prop it up. That is not a small, routine event. That is a generational move. Now, why should an XRP holder care about Japan's currency? Let me connect it simply. Japan is one of the biggest holders of US government debt on the planet. When Japan's currency gets into trouble, one of the ways it could raise cash is by selling those US Treasuries. And a flood of Treasury selling would push US interest rates up, which is exactly the kind of pressure that hurts risk assets like crypto. So to avoid that, the US is reportedly working to open a special lending facility that lets Japan get the dollars it needs without dumping treasuries onto the market. Read that again, because it's the key. The US is quietly working to keep a wave of treasury selling from hitting the system. And keeping that pressure off of interest rates is, indirectly, keeping pressure off of everything downstream, including crypto. One well-known economist summed up the bigger shift by saying the yen carry trade, one of the biggest hidden engines of global markets, has broken down. When the old machine that quietly funded years of global speculation starts breaking, the people running the system scramble to manage the transition smoothly. And a smooth, managed transition, with the dollar kept in check, is a far friendlier environment for XRP than a chaotic one. So that's two dominoes now. The jobs report and the Japan rescue, both quietly easing the exact pressures that have been weighing on crypto. But I promised you honesty, not a fairy tale. So let me give you the catch, because there absolutely is one. Here's where I refuse to be like the channels that only tell you the good half. The uncomfortable truth is this. We might be sliding towards something economists call stagflation. That's the ugly combination of a weakening economy on one side and inflation that still won't fully come down on the other. Growth cooling, but prices staying stubborn. It's arguably the hardest situation for policymakers to fix, because the usual tools work against each other. Cut rates to help the economy, and you risk feeding inflation. Raise rates to fight inflation, and you risk crushing an already weak job market. That's a real risk, and I'm not going to wave it away. It's part of why gold and silver have been climbing lately, as some people look for a place to hide. But here's the reframe I want you to actually sit with, because I think it matters. In a world where people are losing trust in the purchasing power of ordinary money, where currencies like the yen need emergency rescues, and where governments are wrestling with too much debt, what tends to gain attention over time? Scarce, hard to inflate assets. Networks that move value efficiently, across borders, without a middleman taking a cut at every step. That's the exact conversation that eventually leads serious people back to this space, and to assets like XRP that are built for moving value, not just holding it. I'm not promising you that happens tomorrow, or at any specific price. That would be dishonest. But the direction of these macro dominoes, a Fed that's boxed in, a dollar being actively managed, a global system straining under debt, points toward a world that eventually needs exactly the kind of infrastructure XRP represents. So the honest picture is two-sided. Real risk on one hand, a quietly improving setup on the other. And that balance, that grown-up, both things are true balance, is exactly where I want to bring it home. Let's zoom out and put the whole board together, calmly. Yes, the Clarity Act got delayed to September, and that stung. We covered that honestly. But remember what we've already established on this channel. XRP already has its commodity classification from earlier this year. Its network just shipped a major upgrade, full of institutional tools. Those things didn't disappear because of a Senate calendar. And now, layer this week's macro on top. A Fed that just lost some of its reason to hike. A dollar being actively softened and managed. A global financial system quietly being steadied so it doesn't crack. 2 of the 3 big dominoes this week tilted, gently, in a friendlier direction for risk assets like XRP. Not with fireworks, quietly. Which, if you've been watching this channel, you know is usually how the important stuff actually moves. So what do you do with all of this? Nothing reckless, please. This is not a green light to bet the roof over your head or to chase anyone's timeline, including mine. The stagflation risk is real. The road is bumpy. Anyone selling you certainty right now is selling you something. What you can do is understand the machine better than the panicking crowd. While they're staring at one delayed vote and screaming that it's over, you now see the bigger board. A weakening excuse for the Fed, a managed dollar, a global system leaning, slowly, toward the kind of world where efficient, scarce, borderless value networks matter more, not less. The loud stuff grabs the headlines. The quiet stuff builds the future. And the people who learn to watch the quiet dominoes, instead of just the loud one, tend to be the ones standing in the right place before everyone else even realizes the floor shifted. That's not hype. That's just reading the board honestly, one domino at a time. This has been Crypto with BHW. We're early. The foundation is being poured, and I'll see you in the very next one.